It's been a little while since I've done a video on wedding photography. And if you guys have followed me for a while, then you'll know that wedding photography is actually a really big part of my practice. I've been lucky enough to literally travel across the world, shooting weddings, shooting amazing weddings for amazing couples. And it's not something I really talk about that much on the channel, but it is something that I get a lot of questions about, because obviously as a photographer, especially, starting out in your journey, it is a great way to make money. It's a great way to transition into working as a photographer full time. And I actually think that, if you can master being a wedding photographer, you can probably do most other types of photography. Product photography when it comes to photographing details at a wedding, a nightlife photography when it comes to photographing the party in the evening, documentary photography, portrait photography. It's all kind of encompassed within one day. I definitely think that shooting weddings has made me a better photographer all round. But of course, when you are working on a day that does encompass so many different styles of photography, so many different types of photography, it's important to have the right equipment with you. I am by no means a believer that you need to bring a lot of equipment to weddings. Some of my favourite weddings that I've shot have been shot on one lens. Especially at the beginning of my career as a wedding photographer, I hardly ever shot on more than one lens or more than one body. And that's not something I'd recommend. I would recommend always having a second body, just in case, because things do happen. And because weddings are such an important day, it is important that, if something does go wrong, you do have backup systems in place. So I wouldn't recommend just shooting on one body. But my point was more to be that you don't need to have a collection of, 10 lenses that need to come with you everywhere. You can do it with one or two lenses if that suits your practice a little bit better. So in today's video, I'm just going to talk to you guys about 4 of my favorite lenses, 4 of the only lenses I've ever used at a wedding, and why I use them, what I think they're good for, and whether or not I would recommend you adding it to your camera bag. So first up is, of course, the Nifty 50. The Nifty 50 will always be one of my favorite lenses because it is the first lens I ever bought that wasn't a kit lens. It is the first lens I ever shot a wedding on. It is cheap, it is cheerful, and it just gets the job done. The particular model that I use is the Canon 50mm 1.8. And I found that in my practice that has been a good enough lens for me, even though I think I bought it for about £70 or something. It might not even have been that much at the time. But the Nifty 50 is one of those great all-round lenses. It's great for portraits, it's great for documentary work, it is obviously a prime, it's a fast prime, so it's good for low light situations, and it's also great at capturing the detail shots. Now, I have been doing weddings for a long while and I've used other lenses. I wouldn't say I would go back to exclusively shooting weddings with a Nifty 50, but it definitely can be done and I have done it before. However, I don't think it's the ultimate wedding lens, if you will. I don't always bring this one to weddings, but if I have space in my bag, then it is something that I will chuck in there, especially because it is so small. Next up is the 24-70. So the particular model that I use is the Tamron 24-70 2.8. And this lens for me is one that I didn't fall in love with straight away. I generally use prime lenses, so throwing a zoom in there was an interesting thing to get used to, but obviously it being a zoom can be very useful. Not having to switch lenses, not having to switch bodies is definitely a pro when it comes to using a zoom. I have also used the 24-105 Lumix lens before, which I would recommend, but I don't generally shoot on Lumix, so I'm going to be talking more about the 24-70 because that is generally the lens that I take if I'm taking a zoom lens with me. It is a 2.8 lens, so it is relatively fast. Obviously, you don't get those extra stops that you will with the 50mm 1.8, but when it comes to weddings, I don't find myself shooting that wide open anyway. But definitely a great lens to have in the bag if you're looking for a versatile lens. And obviously we are talking about wedding photography being such a versatile form of photography. The thing about wedding photography is that it is not just your artistic ability and your technical skills that set you apart from other photographers. One of the things that I find is of utmost importance when you are a wedding photographer is having a solid marketing strategy. And of course, with a solid marketing strategy, you're going to need a solid website. And that's where the sponsor of today's video comes in. So Zyro is a super powerful, really easy to use website builder. It uses a really simple drag and drop technology, and you can browse so many themes to help you find the perfect theme to showcase your wedding photography. I'm a firm believer that not all good things are expensive, and Zyro is a great example of that. You know, if you're just setting up as a wedding photographer, grab yourself a Nifty 50 lens and grab yourself a Zyro website, because you can get started with them for less than $3 a month, which is just insane, like value for money, especially when you think about the return that you make, given that it is such a high ticket type of photography. So if you use my code Sophia, I'll link in the description as well. If you use that code and that link, you can get up to 86% off and 3 months free using Zyro's web builder. But honestly, I have been using Zyro for a little while, playing around with creating kind of a home for my work edition series where I talk about the business of photography, and I am loving it. It's so simple and it's so quick. Even if you are terrible at using technology, or you're not good at writing copy, or you just have no idea how your website should look, they have so many powerful tools such as AI generators that literally build a website for you. They have 24-hour, 7 days a week customer support. So if you do need that little bit of design advice or content advice, then they're there to help you out. Their Black Friday sale is available for a limited time only, so hit the link in the description and check it out. But back to the video and back to the third lens on my list, and that is the 85mm. So the 85mm is a lens that I have done a review on before when I was talking about product photography. So I will link that in the description, but that's a great kind of segue into telling you that it's great for product photography. It's great for the detail shots in the morning. One of the things I love it for is the shots in the ceremony, you know, especially if you can't get that close up. And it being a prime, we can stop right down to 1.8 if we need that little bit of extra light. I find that this lens is really useful when it comes to speeches, when you don't want to be right up in the groom's face or whatever, or during dinner where you don't want to be in people's personal space when they're eating, all of those kind of moments where it's better to drop back a bit. I love the 85 for that reason. And the model that I'm using is the Sony 85mm 1.8. Next up is my ultimate wedding lens. If you are looking for one lens that kind of does it all, this is the one. This is the lens that I swear by, not just for wedding photography, but for everything. And that is the Sigma 35mm 1.4. I have it for Canon. Obviously I shoot on Sony now, and all of my Canon lenses that I have spoken about in this video, I attach to my Sony with the MC11 adapter. I'll link that in the description if you want to check it out. The 35mm is, for me, the perfect lens. I love it for portraits. I love it for couple photos. I think it has a really romantic look to it. It's great for low light situations because it stops all the way down to 1.4, and you can still get a lot of really sharp images at 1.4, especially because you don't have that like compression that you have with the 85mm. If you're stopping all the way down to 1.8 with that, then your depth of field is going to be a lot shallower than when it's on the 35mm. If I could honestly just have one lens and do everything with one lens, the 35mm would be it. I think because it is such a natural focal length, it's so similar to what you see with your eye, it's really easy to transition between seeing a moment and capturing a moment and putting that across in your imagery. It's also great for group shots because it is quite wide. It's such a sharp lens that it's great for detail shots, and it's great for nightlife as well because you can really get into the party and into the action with a prime lens like this. So yeah, the 35, definitely my go-to, my number one choice of lenses. If I had to choose 2 lenses and 2 bodies, then I would choose the 35 and the 85 and have one on each body. I think that gives you a nice range of focal lengths, to work with throughout the day, and it is often the setup that I go for. But let me know what you think. What is your favourite or your go-to lenses when it comes to wedding photography? If you've got any questions about any of the lenses that I have spoken about in this video, then drop me a comment. I have linked them all in the description if you want to check them out, alongside the sponsor of today's video, Zyro, so you can head over and get your discount and set yourself up an amazing website to go with your amazing wedding photography. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.